Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown with me, John Ferguson. Well, it was an absolute banger of a Bledisloe test for Bledisloe number one, and it means that the All Blacks, who were victorious, and I hope you've seen the result by now, retain the Bledisloe Cup for another year. It was a game full of great running rugby, some really clutch moments, and in the end, the All Blacks were too good. And it was a game that I felt afterwards that I was just absolutely gutted. I was so devastated because the Wallabies were so close in so many ways, but it always felt like the All Blacks had an answer to what the Wallabies were trying to do. The Wallabies found new ways to attack. They did open up the All Blacks. They were going at them in the set piece, scoring a couple of more tries, being able to run in the loose, pick the All Blacks apart. Likewise, the All Blacks found ways to be absolutely clinical in the Wallabies 22, and they were able to heap the pressure on, and they were better at taking their opportunities when they got them. So massive, massive props to the All Blacks. Wallabies fans, I am sure that you are absolutely gutted still, like I am, but nonetheless, we have to go through the game and see what actually happened, because I want to start off by saying that the All Blacks were the better team on the day. And as much as I felt the Wallabies had a few of their calls, really clutch calls, go against them, they were by far and by no means perfect. And it was really hard to watch that unfold because it was so frustrating. Because even with those mistakes, not kicking the ball out on full basic knock ons and some poor skill execution, they were still in the fight. And that was without Will Skelton, um, Rob Valentini. They had injuries leading up with Andrew Kellaway. They're missing players like Tom Wright, and still the Wallabies were in that contest. It is only positive that now they have to go to Perth next week and play each other again with the reinforcements of Rob Valentini and Will Skelton, which have been confirmed to be able to be in camp and to play next week. Andrew Kellaway, very much a wait and see how that goes. Nick White, all of a sudden making a bit of a return into the fold, but that looks to be just as part of a mentoring for the likes of Ryan Lonergan, who was on debut, who had very good game. But one of the big points I want to say here is that I do not want a referee bash. They are human, like the players, like us, and they make mistakes. But this is not about them. And I just want to say, without referees like Andre Piatti, who is the first Italian referee that I am aware of that has refereed both the Six Nations and the Rugby Championship. A massive congratulations to him. He has a team around him that can help him make decisions, including a TMO, which can go back and watch clips. And it was just not it's just not on him only. And I don't want to see any poor rhetoric about him. Refereeing is an extremely difficult job, and without referees in the game, we would not have the game that we love. So thank you to Andre Piatti and his team for refereeing this game. And I will always, always, always say this, that the respect for the referees is one of the greatest assets in rugby, and it has it over other games very much so. So I just want to get that out of the way. And now what we're going to do, we're going to go through the game bit by bit, chronologically for the most part, and actually break down the moments that made this game the captivating, awesome Bledisloe game that it was. Before we head in there, guys, please like and subscribe. You are going to watch this video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I'll be there with you, and I am trying currently to get to 1,000 subscribers. So your subscription will help me so much reach there. I'm so close. 940 last time I checked. If I can get to 1,000, I will be eternally grateful. That means that I can bring more content to you guys about the game that we love. So like and subscribe down there. Click the button. You'll be doing me a massive solid, and I thank you very, very much in advance. So now let's get to breaking down the game chronologically. Let's go. So we start in the first minute with a bit of poor defense from the Wallabies. The All Blacks get a line out, and it is down the blind side that the All Blacks go. And you can see in this clip here, Tate McDermott, the halfback, screaming at Corey Toole, saying, Toole, Toole, come to the blind side, come to the blind side. It's a very small blind side, but nonetheless, the All Blacks are skillful enough to be able to see that space and be able to plug that space with a good amount of players. And that just leaves the Wallabies in the lurch, and the All Blacks, they make 20 meters or something like that in this run. And, I'll put the clip up here so you can have a little bit of a look at it. It is just so clear to see that Shane McDermott is screaming for his players to come across, and they don't do that. That is a poor bit of identification. And Corey Toole probably felt like he had the speed to get to whoever broke down that side, but because the All Blacks did it as a unit and went down there together, they had too many players to overload that space and to overrun Tate McDermott, who was the sole defender down that sideline initially. So really poor defense from the Wallabies there, great space identification from the All Blacks and execution. We head into the third minute where we have another piece of poor defense for the All Blacks' first try via winger Caleb Clark. What you want to observe here is that the Wallabies actually have a pretty decent defensive shape here. But if you look at where Max Jorgensen is standing all the way out on the wing, he's just too far away from where Harry Potter is the winger. So Max Jorgensen's a fullback. He's too far and he's too deep. So he needs to be communicating better with Harry Potter, space yourself out, because Max Jorgensen needs to trust himself that he has the speed to be able to cover Caleb Clark should a kick go through. And I think he probably does have that speed over Caleb Clark, but it's just that he doesn't really trust that space. He obviously his first game at fullback. Congratulations to Max Jorgensen, but he just doesn't do enough to be able to stick close enough. And by the time Caleb Clark gets the ball in his hands, just too much of it's too much momentum, too much space, and too much quality finishing from the All Blacks winger, who was very emotional in the lead up in the national anthem due to his father singing the national anthem. That was a really, really cool piece of history and a really great moment for the Clark family. So great try. Poor Wallabies defense needed to identify that space better and cover it better. So frustrating to watch from a Wallabies perspective in the first 2 minutes. Poor defense, really. We're going to fast forward to the 50th minute just quickly because I want to highlight a piece of good Wallabies defense. And, they struggled with here we see a center field scrum. This is after James O'Connor actually puts the kick out, the kickoff out on the full in the 48th minute. The Wallabies, they're scrummaging against the All Blacks who have a feed. And, they had big issues with defending center field scrum against the Argentinians back when they were playing those two games in Australia. They've cleaned up that act here. We can see that they make a good defensive shift here. And then their system works to push attacks out wide. And we can see that works really well here. And what follows that is a blitz. Now, Lukan Salakaia-Loto, the second rower, does a tremendous job to untangle himself from the scrum in center field, get back, and then race and blitz. And then that forces his opposite number, Tupou Vaa'i, to throw and push a forward pass, which then obviously results in a Wallabies scrum. And that is a great piece of defense and highlights just exactly what Laurie Fisher and the Wallabies are trying to do with their defense. They concede some meterage on the outside to then blitz, and that kind of resets the attack, and it actually makes them unprepared for the oncoming Wallabies attackers pushing through that resulting ruck. So really good piece of defensive work there. They definitely learned their lessons from the Argentina tests. And then we go into the aerial game. So the aerial game is something that the Wallabies and the All Blacks have actually struggled with throughout the Rugby Championship, and it was clear to see in this first example that it was a really, really, really good kick from Beauden Barrett in the 10th minute. He puts it exactly between Harry Potter, the winger, and Max Jorgensen at fullback. Jorgo's probably too deep in this instance, and he had to travel 20 meters forward to actually be able to get to this ball. And so Jordan is just in a much better position to be able to actually catch this ball on the fly, where Max Jorgensen was probably chasing his feet too hard to be able to get to there and couldn't get the leap up high enough. Get it? So then in the second example, which we fast forward, it's a little bit later in the game, the Wallabies players here in Max Jordan just lacked urgency. Harry Potter, to be fair, here isn't in a great position. I'm just reading my notes here because, well, the ball is lost. Okay, the Wallabies don't win it cleanly, and that actually comes down to if we look at the freeze frame, Potter is probably too stagnant in this situation to actually be a genuine shot at catching the ball. Caleb Clark is moving forward, and he's too powerful, and he has too much of a high leap. His aerial game is something that probably why Razor Robinson brought him into the side, and that is just not going to be a positive outcome more times than not for the Wallabies. And then it's Billy Proctor with the urgency to be able to get through the ball. It's another one of those things where Max Jorgensen at fullback is a bit of a teething issue. yes, he makes the tackle and that's fine, but you really do need to win the race for the ball. And if it does bounce and if it's not a clean take, then you need to be first on that ball because as we can see, it has flow on effect and the All Blacks go straight onto attack. So very frustrating for the Wallabies in the aerial game. If we go to the 13th minute, this is probably the first instance where I had a genuine issue with the way that the officiating happened. There was nothing called here for the against the All Blacks. So Jordy Barrett has a really good carry, and then to be able to carry on this momentum, Artie Sevilla goes on and picks the ball and goes for a pick and drive early, not allowing the Wallabies to reset the defensive line and keeping them on their back foot. But then he gets into the tackle of Billy Pollard, and his knee goes to ground. And he probably steals an extra 2, 3 meters here. And if we go through it slowly, and I'll play it back in slow mo, those 2 to 3 meters is really, really important for how the All Blacks continue to attack. And those meters is all that matters for winger Leroy Carter to be able to get his first try. And what I will say about this is that although that wasn't a call, and I think that would he have scored a try in that motion, like the Adi Sevilla that is, I'm pretty sure that that would have been pulled back for a double movement or not releasing the ball and crawling with the ball on the ground. But because it wasn't a try, it wasn't looked at as hard. But in saying this, what I will say, Leroy Carter, the winger for the All Blacks, had a tremendous game. He was much better than his opposite number, Corey Toole, which I think they are like the Aussie and the New Zealand version of each other. Both sevens players, both very small, slight, quick, energetic, electric players. And he just felt like he got the wood over Toole time and time again. The speed of Toole didn't matter as much because Carter has such great top end pace. And the physicality of Leroy Carter, he really is a junkyard dog. I think that name probably suits him better. He looks like he's got a bit of go about him and he looks like he's a bit of a feisty player. And he definitely won that duel between himself and Toole. And both of them are in their infancy of their 15s career. And following in the footsteps of someone like Ches and Colby, it was just awesome to see how good Leroy Carter is going at 15. So big congrats to Leroy Carter. Well done on a good performance. Now heading on to the 15th minute, a bit of poor skill execution here from the Wallabies. I wanted to highlight this moment in the 15th minute because it was a piece of rushed poor skill from the Wallabies. They weren't securing their rucks well at all, and they needed to be able to do that to be able to then set their attack constructively. But Kate McDermott, Len Ikitau caught up in the ruck. They dart, and then all of a sudden, ball at the back is out there, probably a bit too loosely and too quickly. And Fraser McRide in the white headgear takes this opportunity to dish the ball out quickly, and Harry Potter knocks it on. What really needs to happen in this situation is that he should pick and drive as a forward. He should analyze that things are getting too loose, they're getting too erratic, and they need to consolidate and reset, particularly with so many key players in the ruck. So I think this is just one of those moments where the Wallabies really got ahead of themselves, and someone like Fraser McRide, who's an extremely experienced campaigner, really needs to take that ball and take charge of it and say, look, I'll carry, set up the next one. We're got All Blacks on the back foot. Let's just make sure we consolidate momentum. Poor piece of skill execution from the Wallabies, not good enough, and it just results in a net gain for the All Blacks. And I think they eventually kick it. Next, 19th minute, Cody Taylor. Watching this live, I definitely thought that he'd played the nine or that he was in somehow in an illegal position. But as we see as this clip roll on, he does a tremendous job of knowing the rules of the game. So what he does, he stands in the ruck and rakes the ball backwards towards his own side. What a lot of players do, which what they get pinged for correctly, is kicking the ball through the ruck, which is illegal. But what he does here is rakes it back. He doesn't actually touch Lonergan. Lonergan's probably a little bit too passive in this moment, and I'm sure Joe Schmidt and Lonergan will look back at this and say, yeah, you probably should have been on that ball like white on rice. But Taylor here actually does nothing illegal. He is in the ruck. There are no Wallabies players on their feet. He doesn't actually touch the halfback, and that is just a great win and a great piece of nous from the All Black Centurion. So, real time, I was a little bit skeptical of this. I thought that he might have got pinged there for disturbing the number 9 at the back of the ruck for the Wallabies, but no, that's just a great piece of rugby IQ from the Centurion of the All Blacks. Heading to the 21st minute, this penalty was soft and I think very, very harsh on the Wallabies captain in the red headgear, Harry Wilson. So what happens here is the Wallabies eventually win a penalty, but what happens before that, which is what they go back and reverse the penalty for, is a um, no arms tackle by Harry Wilson. And what you can see if I play it back in slow mo, and I know that all things aren't slow mo, but for the sake of this review and the way that we're talking about it, I just want to show that Tyrell Lomax actually changes his line very late. Great footwork from a big man, and he kind of runs into Harry Wilson's head. And so Harry Wilson kind of trying to grapple with someone that's a very big, powerful runner coming straight at him, and then he just managed to hit him with his head and get an arm kind of around the leg quite meekly. But also, what doesn't happen, what doesn't help in this situation is that Taniela Tupou next to him kind of shunts him sideways and buffets him. So he's not actually in a position to go forward and for the legs. And so he's kind of caught in a spot where he gets mangled by Tyrell Lomax. And I just think it was a very harsh penalty because seeing that now, he was really um, getting menaced by a bunch of factors which he wasn't in control of, and I think he was genuinely doing his best to wrap in that instance. There was one that he got penalized for earlier, and I completely accepted that one was a no arms tackle. So because Piatti had seen that earlier, he probably felt that he does mention it actually in commentary, or like not in commentary, but on the ref's mic that yeah, that's the second time you've done that. Just be careful with your wrap. So I think that's a little bit of like recency bias, but nonetheless, not devastating. But I just think it was a bit harsh against Wilson there. In the 22nd minute, um, Bowden Barrett carries the ball here in this instance. Great run from the All Blacks. They're attacking down that 15-meter channel on the right hand side again that they were doing a lot in the first half. And Bowden Barrett appears either knock it on, he definitely loses control of it. He either knock it on in the tackle of Wilson or Wilson strips it. Now, either way, the play should stop there. Whether it's a strip, that's a penalty there in the 5-meter channel for the All Blacks in the Wallabies 22, or it's a knock on and the Wallabies get a scrum. The fact that there was no call here and then no one looks back at it, that's really, really frustrating because it cost the Wallabies because they score in a couple phases later. So again, it was just one of these things watching it live where now that I've gone back and looked at it, I definitely do think that that should have been a penalty. Not a necessarily penalty. If it was a penalty, the play should have stopped. I'm not going to say what kind of call Piatti should have made there, but play definitely should have stopped because if it's a knock on, you can't permit a knock on. You can't permit a try after a knock on, and think if it's a penalty, you at least give the advantage for that, and then it goes back there if there was a resulting penalty. So, just another one of those calls which in retrospect definitely feel that was missed. But like I said at the start, referees are not perfect, and that is a moment if the TMO has something to say to the referee. And I'm not entirely sure how that procedure is going, whether the referee needs to call upon the TMO now because there was so much chat about that. But if that is the case, then that's just the way that the game is played. So, wasn't great for the Wallabies. That is the way that it went down. It's just how I'm seeing it retrospectively. If we go on to the 26th minute, finally, the Wallabies get a win in the air. It wasn't clean, but Max Jorgensen scoops it up. The Wallabies go straight on attack. Quick hands down the line. It's almost Twickenham. It's harking back to the Twickenham moment where Lenny Gitau gives it to Jorgensen. Really, really quick hands from all the forwards in the line. And then Lukan Salakaia-Loto so clearly knocks this ball on in mid-air. It is pulled back eventually, but that wasn't until after the All Blacks seem to have conceded a line dropout because Harry Potter put a chip through and then Bowden Barrett grounded it. And it was really, really a shame that this was allowed to play on because Bowden Barrett then injures his shoulder, seemingly completely innocuous injury, and it seems like to be in a fair bit of discomfort. So bad luck all around, really, for everyone, for the Wallabies and the All Blacks, but it does result to be a scrum. I just think those things need to be picked up a lot earlier. There was an instance later with Corey Toole in the air, and it wasn't until Ryan Lonergan kicked the ball the subsequent phase, and then Harry Potter caught it in the All Blacks 22 on the opposite side that the officials called it back for a knock on. So I just think they obviously have the power to be able to look back and call that, and Andrew Piatti didn't call that live. So it was just frustrating to see how the Bowden Barrett instance conflates with this one and then it conflates with the Corey Tool one that's not on screen and then with this one here. Lukan Salakaia-Loto so clearly knocks it on. So they got it right in the end, but it was just frustrating to watch these calls being made, sometimes a minute afterwards when other calls were not being able to be looked back at. Then you just gotta If you look at the 17th minute, the 52nd minute, and the 48th minute, James O'Connor misses touch on all these instances. That's incorrect, actually. In the 40th minute, he kicks the ball out from a restart into touch on the full. So that's not great, and that's where that scrum results on from the good defense from the Wallabies that we looked at before. But the missed touches, it is James O'Connor biting off more than he needs to. And it's every single time trying to get deep into the 22, but he misses touch by meters each time. In the first instance, it's like 5 meters. He's nowhere even close to getting it in touch. And the second one, he's probably 1 or 2 meters short, maybe just 1 meter short. But nonetheless, Will Jordan in the backfield, experienced, great player, does enough to be able to bring the ball in. And it really cost the Wallabies because then they go hot on the attack in the second instance. And that, um, um, yeah, and if we allow it to roll on, it results with the All Blacks getting a penalty just outside the Wallabies 22 from that counter attack. It's just that is like a 60-meter swing on each of those occasions, and now all of a sudden the All Blacks have a penalty all the way down the other side of the field where the Wallabies ball should have gone out, or even a little bit shy of where the Wallabies ball should have gone out. So that is completely on James O'Connor. And if we're going to talk about James O'Connor quickly, he did not have his best game. It's probably the worst game that he's played since 2022 when he had that couple of games under Dave Rennie. But that is just how the cookie crumbles. Sometimes you have bad games, and I'm not at all saying that he should be scrapped or that he shouldn't play next week. I think he should start next week in Perth. Absolutely. I don't care if Line is back. You got to keep some sort of consistency, particularly now with new halfback pairings, because Ryan Lonergan and Jake Gordon are probably going to be the halfbacks with Tate McDermott, unfortunately, suffering a hamstring injury. And he seems quite serious. So you want to keep some sort of stability and some maturity in there. But you've got to ask yourself there the second kick out on touch, all the three poor kicks that James O'Connor made were done by the 52nd minute. At that point, as Joe Schmidt, why he didn't then play Tane Edmed is a really, really bizarre call because you have to trust your entire squad and you've picked those players on the day. And it's just frustrating to see that James O'Connor wasn't then taken off because everyone's allowed to have an off day, but this is professional sport, it's elite sport. You were taken off in that instance when you're having an average day at the office. He was really brave in defense. He made a lot of good tackles, and he's clearly a very inspirational and good leader in this space for the Wallabies. But nonetheless, you've got to dictate, form's got to dictate above all. And it just felt like he was just kept on for that little bit too long. I would have liked to have seen Tane Edmed get an opportunity there after the 52nd minute kick, a missed touch kick. Then if we go to the 60th minute, this is one of those moments where the Wallabies were hot on attack. It was looking like we could do anything. But no, lo and behold, Artie Savia steals the ball again in almost the exact same spot that he did against the Springboks a couple of weeks ago at Eden Park at the same venue. It was like, I think the spot was maybe 10 meters apart from where he did it against the Springboks. He is just too good. His form is elite. He releases and he gets straight on that ball. And in real time, I thought that was a bit harsh and that connection was too fleeting, but he definitely had rights to that ball. And he's just an absolute inspirational player. What a world class leader. And he did really, really well in his captaincy for the All Blacks. So well done to Artie Sevilla and the All Blacks. I'm stoked for Artie that he got to wear the captain's armband again. I will say though, if we go back in this clip a little bit, the tackle on James O'Connor, which a lot of people take issue with, James O'Connor probably could have milked that a little bit harder by falling on his shoulder and permitting himself to kind of fall more awkwardly. And in real time, Piatti probably would have called that, and then we had gone back and had a look at it. I'm not necessarily for gaming referees, but big stake on the line, a lot of stakes, a lot at stake on the line here. A lot at stake here, a lot on the line here, sorry. And it was just frustrating to see that, he put his arm out and it kind of looked fine. There were arguments that if you go 1 degree past the horizontal, it's done. I'm not really about that. I thought it was a pretty clean tackle and it was just dominant and that's just the way it goes. So I take no issue with that rule not being ruled as a tip tackle. Good defense by Geordie Barrett there. I really do think so. I think the final thing that I'm going to mention there for the game and chronologically is the 72nd minute with the Potter card. Now, in real time, I thought the Potter had all rights to this ball. He scrambles back, he gets into a decent shape, but he does put his hand on the ground before he then rakes the ball back. And even though there were players around him, so in a normal instance, that wouldn't have been a yellow card, but because they'd been prior warned, Harry Wilson had been talked to by Andrew Piatti about repeated penalties in the Wallabies D zone. And so I think that's a completely fair penalty. And although it wasn't great to see the Wallabies get carded after they felt that they'd been battered a fair bit by the referee against in some of those 50-50 calls, I do think this was the right call in the end. It was frustrating to see live, but nonetheless, I yeah, it was the right call. And Harry Potter's shape in that instance was not good enough. He was too long. He was supporting himself with his hands. And for all those young players out there that are still playing, and for looking to play, or coaches that are trying to coach players, you have to be 100% good shape. And you can go back in the video and compare Artie's shape with Potter's shape, and Artie's shape is way better. Plus, his release is a lot more clear. So that's that. That's all for the chronological part of the game. And then what I will say is that the Wallabies were tackling poorer. They were tackling at something like between 83 and 86%. They missed something like 40 tackles, where the All Blacks missed something like 12. The All Blacks got more they beat more defenders, they got more line breaks. This is a complete flip of the script. Before this, the Wallabies were winning all those kind of stats in there, like respectively against the All Blacks throughout the TRC, but All Blacks just turned it on and put on a masterclass and a clinic. Meterage was pretty even, but I think the possession and territory stats really, really came to the fore when you consider the missed kicks for touch. That transfers possession, that transfers territory, and that is also part of the aerial game, which the All Blacks managed to dominate in the end, if you look at it holistically. So, yeah, it was. The All Blacks definitely deserve to win that, and a big congratulations to them. And I just hope that everyone out there can enjoy this game now after the fact for what it was, which was another epic Bledisloe game. That's all I'm going to say on the game. I thought it was a great game. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. God, I was emotional during and after the game, but in the end, you have to be able to just tip your hat and say, well done to the All Blacks. Well done. Keen for another round next week in Perth. I'm going to have another chat later on in the week, another video coming out. We're going to preview the Bledisloe, talk a little bit more about Bledisloe 2, that is in Optus Stadium in Perth. And I'm also going to be talking about a little bit about the news of the week in the rugby realm. So until then, enjoy the game. Go back and watch it. Watch the mini. Get around the rest of the rugby that's going around. Congratulations to Chile, who have secured their Rugby World Cup spot. And I will catch you guys on the next one.